YouTube!
That boy is good.
Well, you know, that's just like your opinion, man.
YouTube! What's going on, YouTube? Evil Foo here again. Just want to do a quick video. I know I've been very busy recently, so I haven't done a lot of videos. But I want to do a video today on November 27th about Bruce Lee. It's his birthday today. It's also Jimi Hendrix's birthday. They're both big in the Seattle area. They're both born within a couple years of each other. Both unfortunately died young within a few years of each other. I believe they're both interned in Seattle. So I created this character. Well, for years on Xbox Live, I've been Evil Foo Guru. That's my gamer tag. It's kind of the identity I've created for my YouTube channel as well a few years ago when I was going to do YouTube. Then I stopped. I never really got into it, so I'm just now getting back into it. But the Evil Foo Guru, you know, he's a Kung Fu character that uses evil Kung Fu. But, and that's all joking and everything like that. But in real life, which normally I don't like to talk about at all, but because this is the internet and nobody really knows me, I don't know any of you, I feel more comfortable being open about things. So Kung Fu has been a huge, or when I say Kung Fu, has been a huge influence in my life. I say Kung Fu as a generalization for all forms of hand-to-hand violence, basically. Boxing, wrestling, you know, any of the Asian styles, any of the South American styles, any basically any style of hand-on-hand combat, you know, unarmed combat, I call Kung Fu. Really because I grew up with Kung Fu, and Kung Fu, I just like the name Kung Fu. But it's just, so I use that as a generalization for all forms of fighting. But in real life, I'm actually an expert in unarmed combat, edged weapons, small arms like pistols, you know, rifles, machine guns, that kind of thing. On YouTube, I just like to be silly about it, but I'm not going to get into a whole bunch of it right now. But Bruce Lee, when I was a kid, was a huge influence. I mean, I liked other people too. I liked Jean-Claude Van Damme, and ugh, he's terrible now that I know more about him, and he's a pathetic, fat piece of shit. But Steven Seagal was a big influence for me, Chuck Norris, all those kind of things. But Bruce Lee, especially when I got older and more serious into, you know, studying fighting and just the human form or the expression of the human body using physical violence, Bruce Lee was a huge influence. He was a genius, way ahead of his time. Obviously died young, unfortunately. You know, in his movies he was very flashy and things like that because he was trying to make it look good and sell it for a movie. It was fake, you know, it's fantasy. But in real life, he was all about his idea of Jeet Kune Do. Like, you have his Tao of Jeet Kune Do. I have all these different books on martial arts, things like that. It wasn't really a style, though. It was really the antithesis of style. It was about just taking what works for you, your own personal self, because everybody has their own different limitations and things they excel at. And, oh, I have these nunchucks on, by the way. These are not, I don't think these are a practical fighting weapon of any kind. They look cool. Dan Inosanto taught Bruce Lee one of these one day, just kind of messing around, and Bruce Lee thought they looked cool, so they put them in a lot of movies and stuff like that. But I really don't think these are a very effective fighting weapon or anything like that. In my teenage years, of course, I played with these like most kids. I played with these a lot, got pretty decent with them, but in real life, I would never grab, you know, a nunchuck. I'd rather have like one of these by itself as a club over this. This is cool in movies and games, things like that. But as far as real practicality goes, it's not very useful. But Bruce Lee was a genius. He was awesome. Today is his birthday, November 27th. Like I said, Jimi Hendrix was also born this day. But he was just a huge influence on things. When I was young, a little backstory about Evil Foo here. When I was young, when I was 16, right around when I was 16, the first Ultimate Fighting tournament came out, or Ultimate Fighting Championship came out with Hoist Gracie, and there was the sumo guy, and there's the Savate guy, I don't remember his name or anything like that, and Ken Shamrock was there. I think the last fight was Hoist Gracie and the Savate guy was the last two contestants. But anyways, I watched that, me and my Kung Fu buddy at the time, this kid from Hong Kong who had immigrated into the United States when he was a teenager, so he kind of have a troubled youth or whatever, so we got into a lot of trouble fighting, you know, not like underground fighting or anything like that, but we got into, you know, street fights and things like that with people when we were young. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. We were watching that and we're thinking, geez, if you rewatch that, the back to the original Ultimate Fighting Championship, Most of the guys were old. They were out of shape. They looked pathetic. There was no rules back then. You could punch in the groin. You could do everything except for biting and eye gouging, I think. Which is funny because I think the Savate guy at one point actually gouged somebody in the eye. But anyway, I was looking at those guys, and I was big into Kung Fu at the time. And school never challenged me. Like, I'm the type of person that I have to be very interested in what I'm doing, or I lose interest and I just move on. Like, I've done a lot of different disciplines in my life of different things I've been interested in, and I move on. And my gaming taste is the same way. My movie taste is the same way. I watched all kinds of different movies, but games, I'll play, a game I'll fall in love with the game, play it for hours, and then I'll just end up trying something else. I hardly ever go back to it. My backlog of gaming is huge, but my life's like that too. So in high school, when that first UFC came out, I saw those guys. I was like, man, and it wasn't a ton of money back then. I think maybe the first prize was $100,000. Maybe it was less than that. I have no idea. I don't really remember. But I was like, dude, I'm just going to drop out of school because school didn't interest me anyways. I'm going to drop out of school and train full time, starting, I was like around 16. I said, by the time I'm 18, I'll be a legal adult. I can go into the next, whatever Ultimate Fighter number that would be at the time, and I can fight and compete in there. And of course, as a teenager, I'm like, oh, I'll be able to beat all those guys. Of course, I'm sure I would have got my ass kicked, but I would have learned, I would have adapted and got better and better, hopefully. But, so I started training. I dropped out of school, started training for anywhere from 3 to 5 hours a day, mostly usually about 3 hours a day. Just, intense training. I was thinking about and studying Kung Fu and things like that at other times, but actually physically exercising, doing about 3 to 5 hours a day. I did that 7 days a week. I did that for about 6 months or so. I was in fantastic shape at the time. And then my uncle, who owns a restaurant, called me up one day. He said, hey, you're not doing anything anyways. You're just sitting around your ass all the time. Why don't you come work full time? And I ended up going to work for the family business full time. And then just one thing led to another, and I kind of got out of the whole Kung Fu thing for a while. I never went to the UFC. I've never had any kind of professional fight. I've been in a lot of fights in my life, even ones where my life was on the line, where me and the other person were actually in real life trying to kill each other. But I never became a professional fighter. I have no idea if I would have been any good. I might have been terrible. I might have been good. Who knows? But I'm on a total tangent here. I totally lost my train of thought. But Bruce Lee was all about, his idea of Jeet Kune Do. I think that's what I was originally talking about, was the idea of Jeet Kune Do. It wasn't styles, it wasn't forms, it wasn't a rigid structure. It was just, trying out different things, taking what works for you. And it was all about simplicity, simplifying. You should always be simplifying, simplifying, simplifying. Why do all these fancy movements to get to, why do all these fancy movements, sorry, Bruce, to get from A to B when the most direct line is a straight line? Just go, bridge the gap, get there. He emphasized, the 5 phases or the 4 ranges of combat a lot. Like, you were out of range, then you stepped into kicking range, then you're into striking range, then you're into trapping range, and then you're in a grappling range. He might have only done 4, like the kicking, striking, trapping, and grappling. I don't know. I may have added the 5th one over the years. Who knows? But that kind of stuff's always stuck with me. It's always been very important to me. Bruce Lee was a stud. A lot of people don't realize. They think of what they in the 70s they did. China is terrible about copyright for infringement, even to this day, and really bad, as a lot of people know. A lot of places are. But so they advertise other actors, like there was Bruce Lee with L-E, there was Bruce Lee with L-I. He was my favorite of the Bruce Lee impersonators. But they actually sold those movies as Bruce Lee movies. So a lot of people, like my mother and father, when I talk to them, they think there was, dozens, if not hundreds of Bruce Lee movies. But really, Bruce Lee himself actually only made, as Bruce Lee, a star. He made, he did some cameos here and there. He did the Green Hornet show, obviously, on TV. And then I think it was Marlowe with James Garner. He had a small part on there as like a mob tough guy. He goes in one scene, he goes to intimidate Marlowe, James Garner's character. And so he goes into his office, he does this jumping kick and breaks like a light above his desk. And I think he even chops his desk in half or something like that, telling him, either to stop investigating something or to pay some money. So I don't remember the details. And then later in the movie, he comes back to do him again. And they're on an up store, or on a second story, or third story, something like that, in a building. Probably, I guess, way higher up than the second story. But they're in this building, the office building. And James Garner, he's Marlowe, the character, the detective, he's a real smart guy. So he knows he can't beat Bruce Lee in a fight. So he gets him really mad and stands in front of this window, basically, and calls him gay. I mean, this was in the 70s, so of course things weren't politically correct back then. So he says, "You're a little bit gay, aren't you?" to Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee gets all mad. He does a flying kick at him. And James Garner moves out of the way real quick, and he goes flying out this window to his plummeting to his death. But then, you know, when he actually made movies, he went over to Hong Kong and made movies. He only made 3 Hong Kong movies. The Big Boss, which was the first one. This was probably the worst one because, you know, he was nobody, so he had to do what he was told. He didn't really have any kind of influence on much at all. This came out in America as Fist of Fury, but in most of the world it was known as The Big Boss. Then he did, the follow-up was Chinese Connection. It came out over here as Chinese Connection, which has been remade. I think that's The Legend of Fist, something like that. Jet Li. It's been remade a couple times. But anyways, that was Fist of Fury. That was the second film. That was a lot better. And then his third film, which he had total control over. He wrote, he directed, he did the cinematography. He got permission to film inside the Colosseum in Italy, which was awesome. Was Way of the Dragon, or Return of the Dragon, as it came out here in America, which is my personal favorite Bruce Lee movie, by the way. Love that film. And then he did Enter the Dragon, which everybody knows him for. But that's it. Those 4 films, the only 4 completed, you know, Bruce Lee. It was the actual Bruce Lee movies. There was Game of Death that came out years after he died, but really it's only about 5 minutes of footage of him in it. And they cut in a stunt double or a double for him and some terrible special effects, like they have a cutout of his head one time. And they put some film over it. It was terrible. But so I don't consider Game of Death. The most iconic thing about that is the yellow and black jumpsuit that he wears in the movie, which is awesome, which, you know, obviously Quentin Tarantino paid homage to in Kill Bill, which is funny since years later, Quentin Tarantino was kind of anti-Bruce Lee in his Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Still love that movie, by the way. I just want to say happy birthday, and that Bruce Lee is awesome. I mean, he was the influence of a lot of different video game characters, like, well, just tons of video games in general, but actual characters that totally just ripped him off or paid homage to him, like John Lee. John Lee from the Dead or Alive series. All of the Dead or Alive games have John Lee in there. He's basically a Bruce Lee clone. The Neo Geo game World Heroes had a Bruce Lee clone in there. Even Street Fighter, when they added the addition after the 4 champion characters. It was Hyper Fighting, maybe? Turbo Fighter? I don't know. One of the later Street Fighter 2 ones when they added T-Hawk and Cammy, DJ, and then Fei Long. Fei Long was a Bruce Lee character. The first boss, spoiler alert if you haven't played Ninja Gaiden, skip forward about 30 seconds, but the bad guy in Ninja Gaiden, who's your master and the first boss you fight in Ninja Gaiden on the original Xbox, his nunchucks in the game, like the sound effects they use is lifted straight from a Bruce Lee movie, so that pays homage to Bruce Lee, all kinds of stuff. Even the original Xbox, when it was being marketed, there was an exclusive Bruce Lee game in there. It wasn't any good or anything like that, but which I need to get this on eBay or something eventually. I need to find a copy of that. But so Bruce Lee to this day was very influential. I mean, he was Jackie in Virtua Fighter. Obviously looks nothing like Bruce Lee, but he does Jeet Kune Do is his style. He's modeled after Bruce Lee. Maxie from Soul Calibur series was modeled after Bruce Lee, but I mean, he was a huge influence. But I just love all forms of fighting. I love ninjas, I love kung fu, karate, jiu-jitsu, judo, all that kind of stuff in real life. So like I played like Ninja Gaiden, the original Ninja Gaiden as a kid. Kung fu, this was slightly before my time, but it was still around when I was a kid. Kung fu was super simple but fun game. Even things like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! I'm a huge Mike Tyson fan, huge heavyweight boxing fan. Used to be back in the day. My grandfather and I would watch boxing together. I love boxing. I got to meet Mike Tyson in real life a couple times. Pretty cool. Anyway, all those things are huge influences, all by Bruce Lee. For example, right here, let's see. This guy, being kicked and flying through the air here by Bruce Lee, that's Ted Wong. And I have a book by him too. That's Ted Wong there in the black. That's one of Bruce Lee's original students. As a teenager, I was fortunate enough to go to a private seminar put on by Ted Wong for my Kung Fu instructor at the time. He was able to arrange a special seminar where he came down for the weekend. We flew him out, put him up in a hotel, things like that. And he gave us a personal seminar for the weekend. This is me, teenage evil Fu there. You can't really see too well from this picture. That's inside of a gym, but that's Ted Wong over there, and that's me. I had, at the time, I was maybe 18, 19, something like that. I had a big braid all the way down to my butt crack. I had big, long sideburns. I looked just like a bad guy out of a Kung Fu movie, like one of the cheesy 70s Shaw Brothers movies. I lived that life. It was awesome. But, so I was really fortunate to meet him and to train with him, and, yeah, I think Bruce Lee is just awesome. He's very underrated. A lot of people just think of him as an actor, or there's people like My uncle, for example, thinks that, oh, well, Bruce Lee only weighed like 145 pounds. There's no way he could take out a big person or anything like that. Michael Jai White, who is awesome, by the way, great actor, love Black Dynamite, one of my favorite films of all time, good kung fu movie. He made the comment a few years ago, famously said that he could beat the shit out of Bruce Lee, which maybe he could, who knows. But Bruce Lee may have only been 145 pounds. That dude was powerful. He was fast. He was skilled. I think, yeah, people underestimate him, but that was a powerful dude. Oh yeah, and I forgot all about this. I wanted to show this in this video, but I have this 25th anniversary collector's edition of Into the Dragon. I've had this for years and years and years and years and years. I haven't opened this in years. This is a DVD. Let's see what came inside of it. I know it had a bunch of cool stuff. It's been sitting on a shelf and in storage for years, literally years. So we have a film frame. There's an actual film, or a frame from the film, if you can see that. It says on the back, it kind of describes it on the back. This picture is terrible. It's all distorted, but that's the actual film clip down, or the frame from the film down there. Let's see, it says, the martial arts classic Into the Dragon was released by Warner Brothers in 1973. It doesn't say that, but sadly it was after Bruce Lee died, so he never got to see himself become the international superstar he became, and he still is to this day. Anyways, it says, the martial arts classic Into the Dragon was originally released by Warner Brothers in 1973. Warner Brothers and Hollywood Archives Collectibles Incorporated are proud to I can't read. I can do evil kung fu, but I can't read. Let's see, Warner Brothers and Hollywood Archives Collectibles Incorporated are proud to commemorate the 25th anniversary of Into the Dragon with this Cinetype featuring a classic image from the film. Into the Dragon Cinetype is an art graphic produced from a single-frame motion picture film that includes one frame of the corresponding film footage. The film was digitally scanned and expertly reproduced onto art paper using state-of-the-art imaging and printing techniques. The film footage consists of an actual 35mm film frame reproduced from the original motion picture by master optical film technicians. That's pretty cool. It has a number on the back of it. That's number 44,199, so not very limited. Well, let's see what else we got in this little box here. Just a bunch of, like, they used to give out these cards in theaters to advertise movies. So you got some theater cards. There's Bolo killing somebody. Bolo's a stud. Let's see, this was the back of the, it's like the sticker that was on the back of the box when he bought it. It just describes kind of what's in the box. And then I have the making of a classic motion picture book. That's got a bunch of stories and things from the film, images in there, pretty cool. And more theater cards. You got, I think that's Anna Capri was her name, right? Does it say somewhere on here? Yeah, Anna Capri, she's like the madam in the movie. She's a good character. There's the main bad guy fighting Bruce Lee in the end, after he has his iconic, scratch marks on there. There's John Saxon punching Bolo. John Saxon was a great actor. My mother had a huge crush on John Saxon. Interesting John Saxon fact. But that's Bolo getting beaten up by John Saxon, which in real life would never happen. Bolo was a total badass. This is Bruce Lee flip kicking Bob Wall. Fun fact, this isn't actually Bruce Lee, that's a stunt double. He didn't do the flip in that movie, and there was a flip in the beginning of the film after he beat Sammo Hung on the in the Shaolin Temple, wearing his Jeet Kune Do gloves, which Ed Parker later stole and marketed as Kempo gloves. But after he beats Sammo Hung, he does a couple flips and goes off screen. That's actually a stunt double as well. There's Bruce Lee punching the shit out of Bob Wall again, which is cool. There's Jim Kelly, old Black Belt Jones himself, elbowing somebody. Jim Kelly was a complete stud, by the way. He has some great interviews on film talking about Bruce Lee and everything. There's John Saxon and the main bad guy. And here is what I thought was a DVD. It's actually, most people on YouTube won't even know what this is. This is a VHS tape. I thought this was a DVD. Another film card on there. It's got some weird splotches from storage. I have no idea what those are. But yeah, it's a VHS tape. So VHS is what came out before DVD, which came out before Blu-ray, which came out before digital. But there's the 25th anniversary edition tape. Pretty cool. Color 135 minutes. Anyways, I've been rambling. I have no idea what I'm even talking about anymore. I just wanted to say happy birthday to Bruce Lee. Happy birthday to Jimi Hendrix as well. I love Jimi Hendrix music, by the way, but Bruce Lee was a huge influence on my life. He always will be. Like, I don't really idolize anyone or look up to anybody in life. I've never really gotten that. I don't understand why people do that, but Bruce Lee is one of the rare few. Captain Kirk, a fictional character, is somebody I look up to. Maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger. Arnold Schwarzenegger accomplished a lot of great things in his life. I'm not talking about his movies or anything, just like he was a poor immigrant, and the way he worked himself up, obviously had help over the years, which he fully admits he had help, and he didn't do it alone, but that kind of drive and determination, that kind of thing is amazing to me, so I respect those guys a lot. Anyways, happy birthday to Bruce Lee. I'm going to get some more regular videos coming up soon, and I hope you guys enjoyed this a little bit. This is just kind of me introducing myself to YouTube a little bit, getting to know anybody that watches. There's only like five people that are ever going to watch this, but you'll know a little bit more about Evil Fu. Anyways, I'll catch you on the next one, and make sure you keep your Kung Fu evil.
I hate to see you go, but I love to watch you leave.
Fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks. Don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
害怕木頭，係木頭要拍你。你之所以打唔穿木頭，係因為你喐手之前已經認輸。